Hey, Lori. Hi, Lori. Hey, Heather.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Good, nice to see you.
I was so happy to see that both you and Lori were invited to join this group.
I know, thank you. Thank you.
It's been a
I'm
while.
excited. I know. How's everything going?
Good. Things are
Yeah.
good. Yeah, I'm really liking the job.
Good.
It's
That's
a tough
important.
time, it's a tough time.
Yes. Yes, it is for families. Yep.
And providers and
Oh,
individuals, and
yes.
it's just like, yeah, the
Mhm.
staffing crisis is just so, it's like, it affects absolutely everything.
Yeah. So we're doing a lot of DSP, certification work and that kind of stuff. So hopefully that goes well and get people certified and
Mhm.
and so. Hi, Amy.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Living the dream.
Yep.
What's doing?
We're just talking about, what's on the top of everyone's head, staffing and people waiting for services and that fun stuff.
Got it.
How's it going in that neck of the woods?
It's going busy.
Yeah.
Busy.
I unfortunately missed Katie's open house on Sunday because of snow by me.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Amy.
Hey, I know you.
I know you too.
Hi.
Hello, everybody.
Hi.
Hey, Keith, I took the liberty of letting people in.
And that's perfectly fine.
I figured it would be.
Hi.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
It's about 1:30. I think we'll give it a couple minutes just to let folks continue to hop on, and then we'll get started. I'm just going to post the agenda flow in the chat so you all have access to what we're going to work through today. Afternoon, Shannon, Dr. Ellis.
Hey, Gunnar.
Hey, Shannon, how are you?
Good.
Let's see who we are waiting on.
don't see
So I've got
Barry
a few
here.
we're waiting on, so.
Yeah, we got Barry. I know Sean Bannon's out of office. He's one of our newly appointed committee members. Sarah, another committee member that was recently appointed, should be joining shortly.
Tracy.
We have not yet. We don't have Tracy yet. Hey, Brian, and Brian Smith just joined us.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Keith, I didn't get anything from Tracy. Did you hear anything from her regarding her attendance?
No, she put a response in for one of the agenda items, so I assumed she would be here.
All right, we'll give it another minute and then we'll go ahead and get started. Sarah, good afternoon, Sarah. All right, it's 1:32. I think we can go ahead and get started. We have the majority of committee members present. So we'll call this meeting to order at 1:32. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Gunnar Abrahamson. I am one of the ARPA project coordinators for DDS here at Central Office. This is the first iteration of the ARPA Advisory Committee for 2024. Oh, somebody just popped up. We got Tracy in the lobby. Good afternoon, Tracy.
Hello.
So we're just getting started here, Tracy. As I had mentioned, this is the first iteration of the ARPA Advisory Committee for 2024. My name is Gunnar Abrahamson. I'm an ARPA project coordinator here at DDS in Central Office. I did post the agenda flow in the chat, so you can take a look at some of the items that we're going to be moving forward or moving through today. Good afternoon, Barry. I want to pass it off to Keith. Keith, if you don't mind just running through the public meeting requirements for this group.
Sure. Thanks, Gunnar. The meetings of the ARPA Advisory Transformational Committee are public meetings as defined by the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act and should follow these guidelines. As this public meeting is held virtually, it will be recorded and made available to view on the DDS website. Committee members must make a good faith effort to state their names and title if applicable each time they speak during the meeting. If a committee member would like to speak, please raise your hand and one of the co-chairs will acknowledge you. There is no public comment portion to this meeting. Members of the public are able to join, watch, and listen only.
This is Gunnar from DDS. Thanks, Keith, for running through that. So the first item we have on the agenda is the introduction of those committee members that were recently appointed to fill the vacancies in this committee. I know there are a few folks that were recently appointed that are not with us today. So we're going to start, we'll work backwards and start with our two private providers who were recently appointed. I want to start with Heather. Heather, if you don't mind coming on and giving a brief introduction, saying hello.
Hi, my name's Heather Latora. I'm the president and CEO at Marrakesh Incorporated. Thank you for inviting me. And I've been part of Marrakesh for the past 38 years and the CEO for the past 10, and we support a lot of people all over the state.
Great to have you on the call, Heather.
Thank you.
Amy, we'll go over to you. You want to give a brief introduction, say hello?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. Amy Montemuro. I'm the CEO at Ableist. I've been here not as long as Heather, 28 years, and in the role of CEO for the past 5.
Thank you, Amy. Amy and Heather, really great to have you on this committee and have you fill those vacancies. I want to skip over to Adriana Ramirez. Adriana Ramirez is the newly elected executive director for the Connecticut Family Support Network. I don't know who just joined us via the telephone. Is Adriana on the call today?
No, this is Lori Coughlin calling in. I'm having technical difficulties, so I'm calling in.
All right. Thanks for being with us, Lori. So like I said, Adriana Ramirez was recently appointed to this committee. I think she's going to serve as a valuable asset in kind of guiding our work forward through the latter half of the ARPA period. She came highly recommended by Shannon Giacovino and a few other folks within DDS leadership. So again, very excited to have her on the call. Next on the list, we just heard from her, Lori. Lori, do you want to come on, give a brief introduction, say hello to the group?
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. I know some of you. I am a parent of a young woman with intellectual disabilities, and I've also been actively working with parents who are looking for residential alternatives, helping them with self-directed models.
Thank you, Lori. As I said previously, great to have you on the call. Great to have you as a part of this committee. The last folks that I wanted to cover are some of our DDS staff that were recently appointed. The first being Sarah. Sarah, do you want to come on and say hello?
Hi, everyone. I think I've met many of you on this call previously, but I'm Sarah Olominick. I've been serving for the last 9 months as an Office of the Governor Fellow with DDS, but I'll be starting as an Executive Assistant here in February, focused on implementing the ARPA initiatives, also doing some evaluation and planning work. And it's great to be here. I look forward to working with all of you.
Thanks, Sarah. Next, we have Mary Pat. Mary Pat, would you like to say hello?
Hi, everybody. I'm Mary Pat DiCarlo, and I am the Director of Workforce Strategies for DDS. Yeah, that's about it right now. And I do help with the ARPA, a lot of different ARPA initiatives that I've worked on. So.
Thank you, Mary Pat. I would like to say I owe a lot of credit to Sarah and Mary Pat. They have been incredibly helpful in kind of guiding me through this new role. And moving forward, Sarah is really going to be a counterpart for me with this ARPA initiative. So a lot of the questions that I field on a day-to-day basis, Keith and especially Sarah have been incredibly helpful in kind of helping me navigate some of those technical issues. In 2024, I will be stepping away for a few brief stints of military leave. And during that time, you can look to Sarah for any questions, any pertinent feedback that you have related to ARPA. You can direct that to Sarah. We know we are in good hands as I step off with her leading that forward for those few weeks. The last DDS staff member that was appointed to this committee is Sean Bannon. He is currently out of office, but he is our operations center director. He's a contract specialist. So with Peter and a few of those others stepping off, there was kind of a need to reinforce some of that programmatic understanding that was lost when Peter left the committee. We wanted to add in Sean. I think he'll be a real asset to this group. So I would like to just say in general, thank you to all those committee members that have accepted the appointment to this committee. You all came highly recommended by DDS leadership. And I know the deputy commissioner and the commissioner were quite happy to see all these vacancies get filled. So pretty exciting stuff. At this point in time, let me make sure I know exactly what's coming up on the agenda. We will move into the approval of the minutes, the December 19th, 2023 minutes. Before we make a motion to approve, were there any edits, any feedback on the version that was sent out by Keith last week? All right, hearing none. Someone want to make the motion to approve?
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
All right. Meeting minutes from December are approved. All right. So at this point in time, what I want to do quickly is just run through the approved transformation plan allocation spreadsheet. This is a spreadsheet that we put together just to give internal and external stakeholders to our agency an understanding of how many provider transformation plans through STEP we have currently with the department, and how many are kind of pending approval, and then what some of the metrics around those plans look like in terms of allocated dollars and number of individuals participating in those transitions. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I created somewhat of a condensed version of this spreadsheet just for easy viewing. Can everyone see that?
Can you make it a little bit bigger, Gunnar?
I can.
Thanks.
Is that better, Shannon? All right. So this is, like I said, a condensed version of the approved transformation plan spreadsheet that we have with the department. You'll see over here the names of the providers who have submitted transformation plans. Just for your own understanding, this first set here, these first 15 providers are the plans that are currently approved and being executed. Transitions are occurring and incentive dollars are being paid out to those providers as they meet certain objectives within their plans. At the bottom here, you'll see 3 pending transformation plans that are with the regional review committees for approval. So the 3 pending plans, we have Marrakesh, which is out of the South region. You've got Kennedy Collective, which is pending, and you have a recent residential plan that was submitted by Vinfin. Looking over at columns D and G, this is where we get an idea of how many individuals are encompassed within these transformation plans. Down at the bottom here, you'll see for the day side, we have 148 individuals who have been identified by these providers who will eventually or are continuing to participate in step transitions to more community-based supports. If these 3 plans over here are approved, and we fully expect that they will be, that number of encompassed individuals participating in day transitions will climb from 148 to 205. On the flip side of that coin, on the residential side of things, the scope is a little bit smaller, but with those 15 approved plans, we have 40 individuals participating in residential transitions to community-based supports. If those 3 plans are approved, again, you'll see that number 40 climb up to 61. Some of these plans are fairly ambitious in scope, so we're incredibly excited about that. Dungarvin has a large plan. There's $2 million worth of incentives that provider can take advantage of as they meet different objectives within that transformation plan. By the similar token, you have OWC, Opportunity Works Connecticut, which is a $1.1 million plan. You've got Marrakesh, which is 3.2. You've got Kennedy Collective, which is 2.8. And then again, you've got that smaller Vinfin plan that comes in about $700,000 worth of incentives. So we are actively working with our resource administrators. We're actively working with our fiscal counterparts to make sure that as providers execute certain objectives within their transformation plans, they're receiving those incentive dollars in a timely manner. That's kind of been one of the important focuses of our group as we move through the STEP initiative, is just ensuring that those dollars that provider qualifies for makes it over to their team in a timely fashion. I will say, if you are a provider who has an approved plan with the agency and you're experiencing any discrepancies in the way that you're receiving those incentive dollars, please reach out to your region's resource administrator so we can help kind of mitigate any issues there. Before I jump off of this sheet, are there any questions from any of you on the call as to some of the context here, some of those transition numbers, some of those allocated dollar numbers, anything that you'd like to ask before we move on here?
Yes, hi, this is Lori Coughlin. I do have one question. On the residential side, are those individuals that have come out of CLAs currently and are moving over to live independently, correct?
That is correct, Lori. These are individuals that are identified as being in congregate settings. So like you said, group homes, continuous residential support systems that are going to move to more community-based support options.
Okay, but they've already been served by the department, so they're not necessarily new.
That is correct, yes.
Correct. Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome. That's a great question, Lori. And just to give you a little bit of background there, this has really been a team effort on behalf of our providers, the case managers, and other stakeholders, including the individual's family members and or guardians, to really help identify those who are interested in moving into more community-based supports, making them a part of these transitions, and kind of ensuring that there are necessary supports in place as they move from that congregate setting into that more individualized community-based support. So great question.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? Win.
Hi, how do you folks view your progress on the residential side versus the amount of time left in ARPA?
That's a good question, Win. I know we've had some internal discussions as we began 2024 as to what movement looks like. I think in interest of being transparent, I don't think the movement is what we wanted as we came into January of 2024. I will say we recently pulled a list to get a better understanding of how many individuals had actually transitioned and found themselves in that new community-based support. That number is currently 22 individuals, 15 on the day side, and then there are 7 on the residential side. Part of the issue that has kind of come into play is there are certain objectives within these transformation plans that need to be fleshed out before some of these transitions can occur. And then on his side, you also have the fact that there are a lot of those kind of unknown variables involved in transitions. You know, we want to make sure that individuals are entirely comfortable with moving forward, right? So if an individual says, hey, I know I had said this is what I wanted, but I'm stepping back. I want to take a little more time to make sure that this is smooth and you know, this is something I want to follow through on, then, you know, by all means, that's something that is completely respected. So the movement's been a little bit slower than we anticipated, but we're looking at 2024 as kind of the year where large portions of individuals continue to kind of move from those congregate settings to community-based supports. That was kind of a long-winded answer. I hope it was helpful. Shannon?
Thank you.
So forgive me if you covered this, Gunnar. I had some dog issues for a second. This is Shannon Giacovino, DDS ombudsperson. I wanted to know, you know, what the ongoing efforts are to try to encourage more providers to participate, and if we are on track to spend the money that we've been given, and if not, if there are any sort of alternate plans for how we can use that money.
Great question, Shannon. I would like to mention on an aside, if you hear noise in the background, my cat's having like a hairball moment, so that's what's going on there. So I can sympathize with you, Shannon. I got kind of off my train of thought there. The first part to your question, Shannon, was what again?
Shannon Giacovino, DDS ombudsperson. What are the ongoing efforts to recruit more providers? And then are we on track for spending? And if not, do we have alternate plans?
Sure. So I'm going to go in reverse order here, Shannon. I think this is a conversation that the All Things ARPA group has continuously tried to address. I think what's really important from our chief of fiscal's perspective is looking down the road. And if we're anticipating that we're not on target for spending all of the dollars wrapped up in these step incentives, then how do we shift that money to appropriate buckets to where it can be utilized? I think we're too early on. Here's Adriana, we'll admit her in. I think we're too early on, to be frank. There hasn't been enough movement and enough data to be able to pull from to really gauge whether or not we're on target to spend that $24 million that's allocated for those step incentives. But we are having continuous conversations as to what that looks like if we start to realize we're going to fall short of spending that money. So, you know, really good forethought on your part, and that's a conversation we continue to have. In terms of getting other providers to participate in submitting transformation plans, I know one resource we continue to utilize is our consulting partners at Deloitte, who have set up technical assistance hours to work alongside providers to get an understanding of what barriers they may be running into as they kind of mull through ideas for transformation plans. We have also started talking about standing up provider-led discussions in which some of these providers who have approved plans and have navigated some of those obstacles we'll be able to walk some of these other providers through that process and help them address any issues that they're running into. Outside of that, I think the commissioner has done his due diligence to really emphasize that we're trying to be flexible with what kind of fits within our parameters for transformation plans. Unfortunately, there are some stringent guidelines that we have to abide by, but we're trying to be as flexible as possible there. Do you have a follow-up to that, Shannon, just before we hop over to Mary Pat?
No, it's a different question, so we'll let Mary
All
Pat
right.
go. Yeah.
Mary Pat?
Hi, Mary Pat DiCarlo from DDS. Gunnar, I believe one of the other things that we've discussed in some of our other ARPA meetings is that we're going to start letting people know about success stories that are coming out of the transformation. So, you know, as soon as we've got a few more people that have settled in and we can, you know, kind of advertise what those success stories look like, then hopefully we'll get some more people that would be interested.
That's a really good point, Mary Pat. That's something our team continues to work on. And on an aside, Deloitte developed an incredibly helpful document. I think you've seen it in this call. Those committee members that are new, they developed a document that encompasses the key parts to each provider transformation plan. It gives kind of a really helpful idea of some of this provider-led change. And we're hoping that as we share that resource, it kind of spurs interest on behalf of some of these other providers who may be hesitant to submit plans. Shannon?
So the other question I had is that I've been involved in discussions with families and with DDS and the DD Council, and Mary Pat's been in those discussions as well, with families of people who have very high levels of need, you know, behavioral needs specifically, but also medical needs. And I guess, you know, I think a lot of families in those situations sort of, you know, while they like what they see happening, feel that their loved ones are not really a part of the vision for STEP. And there's also just tremendous need in that area because these are individuals who either have funding and can't find programs that will take them. Or when they do have programs, you know, the programs really aren't able to meet their needs. And you know, so they're coming to us saying, you know, we need to do more. And so I guess I'm just sort of wondering if that discussion has been incorporated into the ARPA discussion and if there's any way to be able to utilize ARPA dollars to also meet those unmet needs in the community.
That's a good question, Shannon. I think that's, you know, unfortunately something that is kind of ongoing. I haven't been privy to all the information around that discussion, particularly around supports for individuals who of higher level of need who find themselves in, you know, institutional settings, hospital settings, what have you. I know this STEP initiative and some of these extra federal dollars we've received under ARPA has really kind of helped shed light on some of the other issues within kind of our service array that we need to take a closer look at. I know the commissioner is continuing to have conversations on how to address some of those issues. And like I've said before, if ARPA dollars becomes a part of that conversation, if the shifting of those funds to help mitigate some of those issues becomes a serious point of conversation, then this group will certainly be made aware of that. Any other questions, comments, feedback on this portion? All right. So the next agenda item is a communications update.
So Gunner, oh, sorry.
Barry.
Yep, Barry Simon O'Kill. I don't know, Shannon, just to, I know that there has been some openness to be talking about levels of different levels of care that are currently in the system, trying to figure out if they can fit into ARPA in ways. So if that's at all helpful, and you know, I know we've been talking with Deloitte, we've been talking with Gunner, and talking with different people about conceptualizing and possibly figuring out if people can either who are currently in the system somewhere can fit into a new level of care and open up either slots for others and or move people off wait list, whether that counts or not. So those discussions are going on. So just if it presents hope, that's certainly a good thing.
Yeah, this is Shannon Giacovino, DDS ombudsperson. It does. I think there's also an issue, and I don't really know if this is for this meeting, but there's also an issue that, current programs really aren't meeting the needs of this specific population. So I think it goes beyond just finding space for people. It really also sort of speaks to what's available to them when they actually have programs.
Yeah, so I can attest to the discussions are about creating a different level of care that isn't currently in the system.
Thank you, Barry and Shannon. I got to get better about saying this. This is Gunnar from DDS. Michael, you have a question?
Michael Beloff, parent and agency director, agency board member. I just want to highlight and just add to that, the real challenge for most families, just to put a pin on it, is for those families that were in sheltered workshops, where often there were individuals with high lawns who needed a high level of care. The individuals themselves were happy in the shelter workshop. They felt needed. They felt like they were doing things. They had socialization. We all know why. Sorry about that. We all know why they were closed, and we all, again, we can argue about the positives and negatives of closing the shelter workshop. But in many areas of the state, there has not been an alternative for those individuals, and those higher need individuals who are in sheltered workshops where it said either, well, your only real option is to do individualized day and one-on-one. And since we don't have staffing for it, you're going to sit at home. And that's not appropriate. And there needs to be a development of, what happened when the shelter workshops were closed, there was not an alternative given or designed to be able to do that. And perhaps an appropriate use of ARPA funds, if there are leftover money that can't be spent, is to design something appropriate programmatically for those individuals that can be rolled out to agencies around the state, so that each agency doesn't have to come up with their own idea. We can merge those dollars together.
Absolutely. That's a good point. And I think there have been, well, this is Gunnar from DDS, I apologize. So I think a lot of that conversation is interesting, and there are pieces of it that tie to this committee and its function and the ARPA dollars, right? I think at the end of the day, the trickiest part to this is you're dealing with individuals' lives, right? So, the state, I think, has an incredibly difficult time quickly pivoting to address any sort of unmet needs or kind of reimagining some of the services currently offered to individuals served by DDS. In a perfect world, it would be nice to be agile enough to kind of react to some of these issues and kind of fill the gap there to make sure that every individual that comes through DDS's door and service system is adequately served. I will say that from working at central office, those conversations are always occurring. How do you address unmet needs? How do you address those on the wait list? How do you address those who find themselves in precarious situations? That to me is the reason that I come to work every day. And like Barry said, I am incredibly hopeful that some of the work we're doing with ARPA and STEP is really going to spur some creativity to address some of these issues. So all good points, and I would like to see these discussions continue to be a part of how this committee functions. Mary Pat?
Hi, Mary Pat DiCarlo from DDS. I would just like to add to that, the unfortunate part about the ARPA dollars is that it's not sustainable. It's not long-term, right? It's not going to last forever. So what we need to do is use that to build a foundation that we can then hold up through present funding. So that is where some initiatives are very tricky, because if we're going to, say, for instance, come up with new types of programs for higher need individuals, how do we hold those programs up with the current rate structure that we have? And that kind of thing. So that's where it gets slowed down, and it's limited in some cases. So we've got to do that workaround. That's where I think of, you know, if we can use the ARPA dollars to build some type of foundation, and then we go from there. So it's got to start somewhere. So it can start with ARPA, but it's got to be sustainable.
Absolutely. Any additional points of conversation before we move on to our communications update? All right. So our communications manager, Lauren Gray, had her third child, a healthy baby boy. So we're incredibly excited about that. She's away for about 3 months of maternity leave. I want to run through just a quick communications update. So on the STEP initiative front, we have a STEP survey for individuals and families who have been participating in this initiative, and those individuals who are currently living in congregate settings. We have worked with our consultants, McDowell Communication, to send out a follow-up survey to the survey they received back at the end of 2022. The feedback we gather from that survey will help give us an understanding of the effectiveness of our communications around STEP, its intent, its overall goals, and how individuals like participating in those transitions. And again, give us that feedback to make us aware of any blind spots that we have currently, you know, where we can kind of pivot and make adjustments to STEP as it continues to be rolled out. In addition to that, we had a survey go out to staff. Again, the purpose was the same. It was a follow-up survey from one we sent out at the end of 2022. Again, just to gauge our effectiveness on, you know, the rollout of the communications around STEP. The overarching goal for sending these surveys out is to really get an understanding of the most effective way to communicate with staff and communicate with good afternoon, Kathleen. Communicate with staff internally and then communicate with external stakeholders to get a better understanding of the best approach to communicating around our initiatives. In addition to that, you have all seen the STEP video series iterations that we have been rolling out around the supports highlighted through STEP. The assistive technology support video was recently shot on site this past Saturday. So we are incredibly excited about that. It features a young man and his father. And I think part of the message is how assistive technology has lent itself in being an effective way for that young man to communicate with his family. So as that moves towards its final version, this group will be kept up to date, and we encourage you to all be at the launch party that's going to be held by the commissioner in the months to come, or the viewing party. Another piece that we have rolling out, we have 3 new employment-focused fact sheets being released. So underneath the umbrella of employment, we have a group-supported employment fact sheet. We have an individualized day supports fact sheet, and we have an employment transitional services fact sheet that were developed by our EDS unit. And again, like some of these other one-pagers, the purpose there is really to get an easily digestible informational tool for individuals and families, an informational tool to case managers, so they're able to kind of concisely explain how that support works and how it benefits the individual that participates in it. So those are kind of they're in its final review stage, and they'll be released shortly. Part of the holdup to that release is DDS has revamped its website. This is part of the broader effort on behalf of the governor's office and the chief marketing officer for Connecticut to kind of have a more uniform look to the various state agencies' websites. So I know there are certain folks who have gotten to preview what that website looks like. I think it's going to be incredibly different from the one we have now. It's going to be better structured. The accessibility for the resources and information available on the website is going to be more easily attainable, especially for individuals and families who are looking for key pieces of information or access to resources. That is scheduled to launch February 2nd, which is, I believe, this Friday. And in sequence with that, you're going to see those fact sheets and the STEP videos and all that sort of stuff kind of launch alongside of of that new website. So incredibly excited about that. Any questions, comments, feedback on the communications end of the report? Adriana.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Adriana Ramirez with Connecticut Family Support Network. I just wanted to ask Gunnar, when it comes to communications, do we have information as far as enrolling in receiving newsletter, enrolling in the text update, and also click-through rates, open rates for those emails to see how people are engaging with that information? Are they opening it? Are they receiving the newsletter, engaging in the newsletter as part of communication?
This is Gunnar Abrahamson from DDS. Great question, Adriana. So we have our what we call the stats group, who does track and relays all that click information and viewership information to Lauren, myself, and our communications director, Kevin Bronson. We also have rolled out a texting campaign and a social media campaign that really drives individuals and families to some of those more pertinent resources, whether it's the STEP newsletter, the fact sheets that become available. We oftentimes post links, and I'm blanking on the term, but links so folks can sign up via text and email to receive important notifications that come out from TDS. So really important question. Again, we've got the stats group, which is an external consultant that focuses on tracking all that information, again, to gauge the effectiveness of our communications efforts and to ensure we have an understanding of, you know, what's getting the most attention. Michael.
Michael Beloff, parent and agency board member. With regards to the communication, and especially with STEP focusing on moving folks into paid employment, is part of the communications going to include information on MedConnect as a Medicaid program? Getting information on that program from DSS is extremely difficult, and there's not a lot of information on there. If DDS can help with our emphasis on employment, on educating families, especially how to apply for it and why they may want to move from Husky C to MedConnect, that would be extremely valuable. And I think very helpful for families who are scared of working because they're afraid they might lose their Medicaid.
Gunnar Abrahamson from DDS. Duly noted, Michael. I see a few folks nodding in agreement with you. I don't know. I don't have a direct answer to that question, but you know, I've got it down, and we'll circle back. I'll make sure to kind of relay that to the folks that may be able to shed light on whether or not we've got that.
And if we don't, we should create it.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Duly noted, Michael. Anything else on the communications end? All right, Mary Pat, you are next. Oh, hold on.
Got a
Gunnar
question
Abrahamson,
first.
DDS. Adriana.
Sorry, I just thought of something really quick. Going back to the website, I know it's kind of late to ask this, but I know one of the challenges with the old website was the searchability function. And, you know, the website had all this great information, but even when you talk to DDS, they're like, you're better off Googling it because Google will find the actual page for you instead of going in the website. So I was just curious if you could talk a little bit about I know it'll look prettier and it's hopefully indexing pages and forms and different website pages, but hopefully the searchability function, so that way parents and families and caregivers, employees, everyone can stay within the website to find the necessary information, because a lot of times that's what happens with a lot of websites. It's that searchability function that doesn't quite work. So you have to go outside to search within a website.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. The only reason you see me smiling is because I completely understand what you're saying. I think our old website was a little rough. It was incredibly difficult to kind of find relative information, updated information. If you're looking for available RFPs or NOOs, it was troublesome trying to get over to that page. That was a particular concern of the commissioner and DDS leadership, and that's part of the changes that you're going to see within the new website is easier access to information, and you're going to have an easier time searching and finding the resources that you need. And I will mention, I think the way it's worked is we have identified 60 what we're calling MVP pages, 60 of our most frequently accessed pages that are going to be rolled out additionally. And then on the back end, our website team and the webmaster is going to continue to update kind of the next pages in line. And what we would like and appreciate from all of you is as you utilize those new pages, there is a DDS.updates inbox. And if you have issues with the new website, feel free to reach out and let our team know so we can make those adjustments on the back end.
Thank you. That's very exciting.
Mary Pat.
Okay, I'm Mary Pat DiCarlo, DDS. Just to add, we had been promised in regards to the website that it'll be a lot less clicking. Not quite sure what that means, but that's what we've been told. So we'll see. All right, so I'm here today to bring everybody up to date on shared living. Many of you may remember years ago when shared living started, and there were a couple of programs. Heather has some of those programs right now. And we tried to, at the time, kind of define things, get things committed to paper. Got very cumbersome, kind of got left on the shelf, collected a lot of dust. And so back in September, it was determined that DDS was going to use some of its ARPA dollars to resurrect shared living, or instead of looking at it that way, looking for new alternatives for residential services. So we put a committee together where Wynn and Shannon is on the committee, as well as a few others from DDS. And we've been working with Deloitte. And we've really kind of gone from the ground level to start looking at shared living, redefining shared living, like making it less cumbersome, making it much more person-centered. With the help of Deloitte, there was an environmental scan done of several different states as to what shared living looked like in their state. Many states called shared living what we call community companion home. So that kind of skewed things a little bit in the beginning. And then we kind of went in a different direction, and we looked more for information on living companion waivers and states that worked under that. And we really found that Virginia had probably the best definition and program setup that really aligned with what Connecticut is looking for. So we've used that a little bit as a template. The committee has been meeting every other week, and we've been going through a process of putting out questions. And when we get a majority that agree on an answer, then that answer is what is being used and put into the definition. I don't know about Wynn and Shannon, what you guys think, but I think it's been a pretty streamlined way to get to an endpoint. Actually, just so you guys know, I just saw the first draft of the definition just before we got on this call. So I'm kind of excited. So we're at that point now where we have formed a definition. Deloitte is helping to start putting some things together in regards to a toolkit. But now we're also at the point where we've got our biggest challenges. How do we pay? What are the rates look like? How do we do this in regards to the Department of Labor, whether it's self-determination dollars, whether an agency is involved, all of those really technical things. We're at that point now. So it is moving along. It's moving along pretty quickly, I have to admit. And I'm hoping that we will have something very soon, and we will have the opportunity to do a pilot or two within the state to really kind of finalize this. So I do believe a lot of states, when we were talking to them, they had some pretty good plans on paper, but their implementations were very limited. And I really do believe here in Connecticut that we are going to have some success with this, because we have families that are saying, well, what can we do? Right? And they want to be involved, and they don't want to just pass it off, pass their child or their family member off to an agency and say, okay, you take care of it. They want to be involved. So I think that collaboration is going to work best with shared living. Other thing is, we're trying to change the name, just so that you know. So if anybody's got any bright ideas, they can pass that on to me. So Shannon, Wynn, do you guys want to add anything?
This is Shannon Giacovino, DDS Ombudsperson. No, that was a great report. I'm really excited about this work.
And whenever it's our Connecticut, I agree with Shannon. This has been a very, very good process. It's been eye-opening for everybody, and it's been really good. But the tough stuff's ahead.
Tough stuff ahead, right?
Gunnar Abrahamson,
Kathleen.
DDS. Kathleen.
Thank you. Kathleen Stelfer, the Arc Eastern Connecticut. When do you anticipate that people will be invited to do pilots, and what should we be doing if we might be interested but want to make sure that we're the right agency for it and so on?
I would say at this point, give us until maybe late spring to kind of pull things together, and then we will send out some communications and some, information, right? And we will have formalized some things so that we then can get that out to you guys, and we can then go for, take a look. So I would say around late spring.
Okay, thank you.
Barry?
Barry Simon O'Kill. Continuing along that same line, how is the rate methodology component of this working? Because in order to even consider whether we want a pilot or not, would be whether we're going to cover our costs. And so from that standpoint, just encouraging you to lay out what you're going to have included from a service provision standpoint from an agency. And I hope we're not backing into a number. We're creating here's what we want from a practice standpoint, and therefore we will create a rate that allows for the agencies providing those services to cover those costs.
Yeah, this is Mary Pat Carlo from DDS. Barry, we haven't gotten into the discussion yet on the rates or what the rate methodology is going to be. I actually have my first meeting regarding that this week, but we are very mindful of all of this being person-centered, and that especially if we use the self-determination budget model, that the budget will be built based on the individual's needs. So there'll be the way I envision it, I don't know that this is going to happen, but the way I envision it would be that there would be some flexibility there based on the needs.
Okay, that's not encouraging, but I'll trust.
Okay, I'll try.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Any other questions for Mary Pat, Shared Living? All right, so, Lori.
Yes,
Lori, if
Coughlin.
you're, go Go ahead, sorry.
I have one question for Mary Pat. Now, in looking at the shared living, and looking at possibly building it around the consumer, would you be looking at an agency as a backup plan for the shared living program?
That is one possibility that we're looking at. Yep.
Okay. Okay, because I've worked with a lot of families and self-direction, and that's the one pitfall is a backup plan. So say that person that's living with a consumer gets sick or vacations or things like that. Staffing is always an issue with, I mean, it's an issue with agencies and it's an issue with self-direction as well. But I think for the families involved, knowing that there is that backup plan could be very helpful.
Yep.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Dr. Ellis, you have a question?
Yes, hello. As you all know, diversity is an area that I don't want to have us forget in all of this work and these discussions. Are we going to be collecting any data around populations, demographics, age, anything of that nature to see if there is any impact or disparity?
This is Mary Pat from DDS. Haven't gotten that far yet. I would think once we have things defined and a program that we're going to be putting forward, that would be included, yes.
Thank you. And I forgot to state my name, Cheryl Ellis, Director of DEI at DDS.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. All right, so I think that does it for the shared living update portion of our agenda. I know item 8 was a presentation from Deloitte on their technical assistance hours. Deloitte's team was not able to make it to today's call, unfortunately. I know some information has gone out from their team as to how those technical assistance hours have shifted. They're still available. So you know, if you haven't submitted a transformation plan, you're interested in connecting with Deloitte, please do so. Please, you know, help spread the word with your colleagues and some of those other providers that may benefit from those TA sessions. The last item on our agenda today is a committee open discussion. I know Keith and I had sent an email to this group last week asking you to submit agenda items that you would like to raise for discussion amongst this group. Is there anything that we'd like to bring up before we move into adjournment?
Gunnar, this is Cheryl Ellis, Director of DEI DDS. I would like to take the opportunity to let this body know that the DEI office has been able to work with Central Connecticut to acquire an intern who will work with us around family engagement, Jonathan Tullier, and he is present today. He comes in on 3 days a week, a couple of hours on each day. Thank you.
Thank you, Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Thank you, Dr. Ellis. That sounds like a great addition to DDS, a great addition to our resource team. So thanks for bringing that to this group's attention. Heather?
Hey, I had 2 quick things. I thought of something with shared living that Heather Latora from Marrakesh, with shared living, we were careful to make sure, because there was a comment about families want to participate, families want to help, families want to be part of the solution and that kind of stuff. And then when we were talking about diversity and inclusion, we did make sure that our shared living model could work for anyone, whether they do have family involvement or not. And so in some case, a family might buy a house, and in some case, the control of the home would still be with the individuals, but they'd be renting the home and it would work under rent subsidy. So it's just, I'm glad you brought up the inclusion part of that. And then the other thing just, we did have a family member that's been doing self-direction successfully for many, many years, but he has specialty needs. He needs people for backup that are able to use American Sign Language. So we hooked up and, you know, just talked about maybe some kind of quasi self-determination agency backup plan for, just try it out, see how that works for self-determination, because I hear that clearly as the only real issue with the self-determination is not having that backup. And so maybe there's a way to pilot that as well. That's it.
Gunnar Abrahamson from DDS. Heather, thank you for that. Any additional comments, questions, points of discussion from this group? Adriana?
Hi, Adriana Ramirez with Connecticut Family Support Network. I just wanted to ask, I don't know if this applies to us, but I'd like to see maybe in the future meter hear more about the AT&E and the assistive technology and that program and how it's moving forward, or what's its impact and what is it involved, and to understand it a little bit more, because I've heard about it, families ask about it, but I'm not completely understanding it possibly.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Adriana duly noted. What we can do is in some of these upcoming meetings, have Patricia Simbala, our Director of Assistive Technology, come in and give this group an overview of you know, AT&E, its functionality, and some of the work being done there. Tracy?
So, yeah, I wanted to go back a little bit to the issue of provider engagement, and it's been difficult, from the get-go of getting broader involvement, getting broader feedback as to why agencies may or may not have plans on the table, and I'm wondering what role this group might be able to play in creating a better and more robust process, getting more people to the table. I think one of the things that up till now, I mean, it was good hearing that some of the providers who have plans would be involved in the process, but maybe we've been a little too insular in the approach, and maybe if this group could work on helping make that process a little broader, hopefully a little more successful, and getting opportunities for all providers to comment on why or why not, and if they're not, what else might they have doing that isn't fitting into necessarily the ARPA initiative, because just because it doesn't fit into ARPA doesn't mean it's not going to help DDS have a more robust continuum of care.
Gunnar Abrahamson from DDS. Folks, feel free to share your thoughts on that. I know I did make mention that we are working to stand up a kind of a group discussion or a group forum that's private provider led. Again, getting some of those providers who have submitted plans and navigated some of those obstacles to lead those conversations. Our North Region Regional Director, Stacy Silva Gordon, is leading those efforts. So again, we're hopeful that that's going to be a valuable resource. And I will say, we are not concerned about the number of plans and the interest being generated unique to STEP. We do know there are 6 additional providers on top of those approved plans and those pending plans that are actively working on piecing together a transformation plan. Tracy does bring up a good point, though, is we've maybe been a little too insular in our discussion and providing assistance to those providers who may be experiencing obstacles. So very good point, Tracy. Any thoughts on that? Any feedback? It's kind of an ongoing discussion. Barry?
Yep. So Barry Simon O'Kill, two comments on 2 different points. One is, I agree with that, but I would suggest that only you have, or mostly you have the information on how much resource continues to be available. So I don't know where you are in that, because your time and money may be running out. So to that end, if you're looking to get more providers, then I would go to where the providers are, and I would suggest maybe doing a presentation at the Alliance, encouraging encouraging involvement. Once again, I'll say, you've been really open about sending out emails after emails to the provider. So it's not like you haven't been, the department hasn't been trying, but that may be a good place to go if you're looking for, more participation. So that's my comment on that. I'll let others comment on this topic, but I want to go back to the AT topic because I had a comment on that.
Any additional feedback unique to what we're talking about now? Kathleen?
Thank you. If I may, I don't have 3 hands up. I don't even have 3 hands. So,
Right,
so
only 2.
one comment will do. But I think one of the problems with transformation is it's difficult. And we are in the process with ARPA funds of refreshing our website. And we don't have it up yet, but we're going to make available a template on transformation that is an adaptation of the McKinsey 7S. And one reason transformation is so difficult is because there are multiple levels and layers of operational integrity that must be a part of the process in order for that transformation to stick and actually transform. And I'm wondering if we could help people. When I gave a workshop at the ATEC conference down in Mystic last summer, a lot of people were very interested in the template, but I had to do a follow-up 90-minute seminar on how to use it because seasoned execs were not able to take that dynamic template. And so what we do is we have a couple of 2 programs that we transformed, and we literally walk people through what you need to have in place in order for transformation to happen. And I think people want to transform, but it's not easy. And you need to involve multiple levels of your organization, multiple layers of resources, and multiple operational disciplines. And it's hard to get that many people in a room, even if they want to work together.
Gunnar Abrahamson from DDS. Thank you, Kathleen. I was trying to think of what my answer would be to that feedback. I think you kind of hit the nail right on the head. I mean, it is incredibly difficult to cover all aspects of what's involved in terms of system transformation. Each provider does things differently. The state looks at all that transformation differently. We've got our consultants, we've got our communications team, these different kind of groups that address things differently. Creating that uniformity and approach from our standpoint has been one of the biggest issues, I think, in effectively rolling out STEP. I don't think that's unique to state agencies. I don't think it's unique to DDS. I think anytime you roll out an initiative, you're more or less kind of building the plane while you fly it. And I think that's where groups like this come into play. I think some of this feedback is incredibly valuable. Barry, you brought up a good point about getting in front of that group that you mentioned and encouraging participation, encouraging feedback, encouraging discussions. Kathleen, you bring up a good point as well. This is something that we're constantly trying to adjust to, constantly trying to kind of, fill the holes and make the proper adjustments. I don't know if that answers kind of your question or your point, but I think that's something that we've constantly tried to strive for. Whether or not we've hit the mark, I'm not sure, but it's certainly something that we take into consideration as we continue to roll this out. Brian, I think you've had your hand up for quite a bit. I apologize.
Oh, don't worry about it. I switched arms because it was getting sore. Brian Smith, Assistant Regional Director at the Department of Developmental Services, Family Support and Self-Determination Division in the South Region. A couple of things. Kathleen, you don't have 3 arms. The number is associated with the order by which your hand went up, so that the moderator knows which order to go. to go back to the comments around this, I look at this as like a Trivial Pursuit game, right? You have all the pieces of the pie, and all those pieces are members on this team, right? On this call right now, and we all have to have that buy-in, that interest, that drive to really affect system change, and we have to do it in a collaborative effort. And sometimes there might be a piece that needs a little more nudging than another piece. But all in all, we have to get the collective whole on the same train and to affect the system changes. I have had some recent internal experiences within the agency that shed some light on messaging. And I think, Adriana, you brought up are we counting? Are we looking at the clicks on the videos? Are we looking at that kind of data? And that drew right in alignment with my experience I had recently, and how many of our own staff internally haven't really jumped into some of those videos or the literature or just general awareness around STEP, just because they are in their own little silos or bubbles based on their work functions and roles. So we have work internally to do just as much as working with our external stakeholders. So I appreciate and I really support all the conversation. I'm going to jump in front of Barry to go back to AT real quick. Adriana, anybody who's interested in AT and me, have them contact their DDS case manager. They have the information and resources, and if not, they will connect the individual or family with our self-advocate coordinators who are running a lot of those trainings, okay? So that's an easy pathway for any families you are in contact with. Have them get in touch with their case manager, and they can get the information about the AT&Me project to them, and if not, our self-advocate coordinators can facilitate getting that out, okay? But I do appreciate having Patricia come too, just to speak about the AT in its entirety, because there's different layers beyond just the AT and me that she's working on. So thank you for your time.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Thank you, Brian. Anything else for discussion points from this group?
Yep. So Gunnar, I wanted to get back to AT. So, and I'm happy to talk about it offline if you would like, but I know, being one of the 3 providers that submitted a contract a year ago and are still in the process of not knowing what that contract is going to be, and being told at the last meeting that DDS was going to be hiring 4 people to be coming up with a vision of AT was going to be for the department. I'm just concerned. So happy to talk about it offline if you want, but just to put that out there, that I think it needs some attention.
Gunnar Abrahamson, DDS. Barry, I know you'd raised this as a discussion point back in December. I'm regretful that Sean wasn't able to join us today. I know he's been involved in working through that contract language with the Attorney General's office. We understand, Barry, that there are pain points there. In Patricia's defense, I think it has been incredibly difficult for her to get all the stuff that she's currently tasked with off the ground. Just to give everyone an understanding on this call, Patricia Sambala is running an entire division by herself. I think what we have done, Barry, in the interim is bring that to the attention of our All Things ARPA group and really kind of surge resources around that, the communications for that contract and how it's going to work once it's approved. Those efforts are ongoing, and Patricia has 4 staff positions in the pipeline that we hope are approved and filled by the end of the spring. So the efforts around communication and how that division functions, will start to improve, once those staff come in. But it's severely under-resourced. We're working on filling those additional positions, and in the interim, we're trying to get key staff involved in those discussions around how that contract works once it's in place. I understand your frustration and the frustration of the other 2 providers who are identified as vendors. I forget the name of the person that mentioned last time that her agency was ready to execute this thing back in summer of 2023. So, the ball's in our court, and we are trying to get that sorted out. So I'm more than happy to have a conversation offline.
Okay, so I'll wait for you to contact me. Thank you.
Any additional points of discussion? So our next meeting of this group is set for February 20th. If you have any questions in the interim, if you got anything that's pertinent to bring back to this group, please let us know. If you have anything you want to bring up for agenda items for that open discussion piece next month, please let us know. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I
Second.
have a second? Seconded by Barry.
Oh,
This
it
meeting
looks like
is
when were you? Oh, sorry.
Win. All right. When you're good? Very good. All right. Well, this meeting is adjourned. Again, if you have any questions offline, feel free to let me know. Barry, I'll reach out.
Great. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye all.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.